Today's the 27th day of Cheshvan, the 28th of November. In America it's Thanksgiving, which is a very holy day, because it's always good to give thanks, especially if you know who you're giving thanks to. The Rebbe talked about it, and this, for us, Thanksgiving is Chanukah.
There's Hodu.
So for us it's Chanukah, and that's also coming up. Only 28 more days, 29 more days. Okay. So we were in chapter 31, Kuf Lamed Bet Amud Bet, page 264. So we said yesterday that the reason that the Sfirot are considered to be in Yesh Me'ayin, that they're separate from Hashem in some way. They're not really separate, but they have some distinction from Hashem, is that they have definition. Whereas Hashem himself has no definition. On the other hand, they are godly because Hashem is unified and clothed in them fully and completely, so that they don't feel their origin. They're minbitul. They're in a sense of nullification.
Is a malach the same way in that?
No, so we said a malach is not like that at all.
It's not like that.
No, he has.
They have a sense of identity.
They have a sense of identity, and they're defined, and they're not in bittul. Okay. They're not completely bittul, which is why sometimes the malach messes up. Yeah, okay. He doesn't do exactly what he's supposed to. So we're like in the 6th line, 7th line at the end. ונמצא אף על פי שנתבו יש מאין, דהיינו שהוא התהוות מהות חוכמה וגדר מיוחד שזהו בחינת היש ודילוג לגמרי מאין סוף ברוך הוא, עם כל זה בטלים כזיו השמש בשמש, and so on, as we saw all this a couple of times. והם אלוקות שאין סוף ברוך הוא מתייחד עמהם כנ"ל. And they're godly because the infinite is unified in them in the way that we saw. מה שאין כן הנבראים, שיש בנפרד, לגמרי בידיעתן, אף על פי שבאמת הם גם כן בטלים כזיו, וכדילל עוד כ"ג. Now he says a very important thing. He says, everything else, all the other creatures, which certainly from their point of view are separate, they are being and separate, bidiatan, in their knowledge, their consciousness. Everything has consciousness, except for a sphira. Sphira doesn't have consciousness of self. But everything else has consciousness of self. And in that consciousness of self, it knows itself to be separate. Even though, and now he says, but the real thing is that the consciousness causes it to feel separate. אבל באמת הם גם כן בטלים כזיו השמש בשמש שגדילל עוד כ"ג, that we saw in chapter 23, that really they're not what they think they are. Meaning consciousness causes us to feel separate, but we're not really separate. And this is the big issue of faith in Yiddishkeit. This is emunat yichud. That's what we saw in chapter 23. This is what it means that Hashem is one. We said it's not one in the sense of one and not two, but one in the sense that this is all there is. And so the fact that I feel that somehow I'm running a separate life, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I have 70, 80, 90, 100, 200 years to live, whatever it is, that's from my yediyah, that's my consciousness. But from Hashem's point of view, that's not what it looks like. That's what you said before. Hashem knows. Hashem knows. We only deign to know. We think we know, but we don't know, because something's misleading us to see the world as if it's us against everything else, meaning I against everything else. But it's not the way it really is. And I know this is something with Yaakov, I tried many times to do all kinds of things to get this, to get some picture of this. But I think the easiest way, and I think I talked about it, was that you look in the mirror, and you look at the world through a mirror, including yourself. And so when you look at yourself through a mirror, you're not something special, you're another one of the things in the world. Or if you look at a photograph, I think I told you this story also, that ETO once said that he saw a photograph of his family at a wedding. He said everything looked fine except for this guy over here who he recognizes, but he looks out of place. That's him. Everything else is fine, everything. But really you have to be able to see it as from Hashem's perspective, that everything is equal. There's no special. When you think about it, I'm not something special. Everybody thinks they're special. So it's either everything is special or nothing special. But you can't say I'm special and nothing else is. That doesn't work. So today there is a movement in the world to say that everything is special. but you see that it's half-hearted, because people don't really think that everybody else is special. Because you can't have consciousness of the other the way that you have consciousness of yourself. So really the only eitzah in the end, the only advice in the end, is to try to see the world from above. And there was actually a whole book written about this, and they translated it into English. There was a guy, turn of the century, of the 19th century to the 20th century, in Vienna was a very interesting place. A lot of rebbes there, and there's a lot going on in Vienna at the time. Today Vienna is the spy capital of the world. You could say that in the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century, it was the intellectual capital of the world. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So there's one guy there, again, there's a list of books and rebbes and interesting things that happened there. And one of the most interesting ones was a guy called Eckstein, and he wrote a book called Tnei HaNefesh B'Asagat HaChassidut, the conditions of the psyche for attaining Chassidus. And he starts off with the idea that you have to train yourself to see yourself from the outside, from above. And he says you can't start with yourself because it's very hard. So you have to start with other things. Looking at, he goes to India. He says, imagine that, a very foreign culture to us. Imagine that you're looking at a wedding in India, and he describes it. I guess he had read about it, or he had been there, I don't know what. And he says, and imagine the chassan and the kala, which is so different from you, but think about their emotions and what they feel on this special day, and so on, and try to see it from above, and then like pan out and move to where you are, and see that there's also emotions and feelings, and it's the same thing. There's no sadna de'arachadu. Everybody in the world has the same emotions, as it were. Obviously, it's not 100% true, but that's the idea.
I like the mushroom where you're a spectator in the grandstand of a ball game, but you're also the player.
Oh wow!
And you do that.
Huh.
I've done that. It's very interesting. And also think of everyone else with hashgacha pratit too.
Right.
And how I'm.
Right, so that means everybody's special. Hashgacha pratis means everybody's still, just as special.
But I'm as ordinary as the other.
Right. And I have Hashgacha pratis like that.
Hashgacha pratis has as much effect as in the, do you understand?
Right. Listen.
אני חושב, הדבר הכי קשה קשה לי להבין, לאהוב את השני כמו שאוהב.
See, but that's that mitzvah, to love someone else as you love yourself, is only possible if you stop loving yourself differently than someone else.
Yeah.
That's the only way. Maybe. Yeah.
בר לוין, נכנסתי לרופא, כי הרגל שלנו כואב, לשתור.
But it's only with his wife. If he would have said it to the doctor, I understand. Yeah, you start from your wife. You start from your kids. But it's very hard. It's very hard. So Reb David of Lelov is famous for having fasted for a long time because his son was very ill, and after he healed, he got better. Then he fasted, and he said he's fasting because he saw that when his son was sick, he cared for him much more than he cares for the neighbor's son.
Ooh.
Okay, but to know that there is something that's not entirely true about the way that we feel. But again, I said it can go in two directions, and there is a preference in the end. Again, because this is a real world, Hashem really created something. The preference is that you should love everyone the way you love yourself, meaning not to forget about how you love yourself, but rather to be able to extend that to everyone, to see that everyone is special. That's really the preference. ואין בפרט דשאר עצמות וכלים, פרק ד', מה שבאר עניין 10 ספירות הכלים, שבהם מתלבש אור העצמות הפשוט, אמנם לפי דרכנו הבן שגם 10 ספירות הכלים אינם נפרדים חס וחלילה. Okay, so I said yesterday that this all has to do with what mashal you use. The Ramak had a different mashal, a different metaphor in mind, and there he had this thing that in the kelim, in the vessels of the 10 sfirot, that's where the simple, meaning the lo mitlabesh, the unenclosed light the pashut, like again naked, without any definition, comes in. That's his definition, and it's famous from the Baal Shem Tov that the Baal Shem Tov preferred that explanation. That in the atzmus of the kelim comes the atzmus of the or. And where did the Baal Shem Tov use this? He said this about simple Jews. He said that dafka in a simple Jew comes the simple light of Hashem. What he means by simple is that someone who's not adorned, who is not dressing himself up in intellect and in knowledge and in stature and in all these things. Someone who's simple, just serves Hashem very simply. Maybe he doesn't even understand. Like we talked before, the guy's in Montana. He doesn't even understand what he's saying. He doesn't understand. He should understand, but he doesn't right now. And, you see, and he comes to shul anyway. And he says someone like that who is now davening, that there you see, that in that type of vessel, that's where Hashem's simple light, meaning unenclothed light can come in. So the Baal Shem Tov actually preferred it. In any case, he says, but according to our understanding, yuvan shegam ha'esas v'od ha'kelim enam nifradim chaz v'chalila deim ken hadra kushiyato sham. He says that the question there doesn't even start, that they're not separate in the first place, that you have to say that the simple light comes into them. Anyway, we'd have to open there and see it. It's not so important for what we're doing here. דים כאן הדרה קושייתו שם בפרק ג' לדוכתא, דים כאן חס וחלילה הוא יתברך יודע בדעה שחוץ ממנו, אלא הכלים הם גם כן אלוקות, וכנ"ל באריכות והכלים, היינו מהות חוכמה נאצלת ממנו יתברך ומהות חסד, אבל האור הוא פשוט בתכלית הפשיטות והוא מתייחד עם הכלים. In any case, he says, in our understanding, the vessel is of a lower level than the light of the sphera. They are different. But again, this is a very tangential issue. וזהו המדע והוא יודע ובידיעת עצמו ידע כל הנבראים, כיוון שלמד כלים דאצילות, the 30 vessels of אצילוס, and נשמה וחיות לביאה, they become the soul and the life force of the world underneath them. אמנם מהותו בעצמותו יתברך הוא למעלה מכלים הנ"ל, ומבחינת האור מתלבש בכלים, שהוא רק מבחינת הקו כנ"ל. And again, he goes again into this, and there's a famous it's a very short letter that's attributed to the Baal Shem Tov, where he says he went back to this shita of the Ramak, of going back to the Kav. But let's not get into it because it's a whole different discussion and not relevant at the moment. So now getting back to chapter 31. Based on all this, with this we can better understand the idea of the higher unification and lower unification. ייחוד העילה, ביטול אמיתי, שנאצל בטל במציאות לגבי המאציל אינסוף ברוך הוא, כביטול הזיו במאור. וזהו בעולם האצילות. So the higher unification is when the created, or the emanated, whatever Hashem created, is so nullified in the emanator, that it's like the rays of the sun in the sun before they extend outwards, before they project outwards. And even though they still have some facets where they are something from, they're being from nothing, because they have some definition, they're not God. Because of their specialness, because of their uniqueness. So this all pertains to the world of emanation. So usually when we say Yichud Ha'ila, we say the higher unification, we usually mean the Sfirot. That's usually the way to see it. It's in the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation. And when Hashem emanated wisdom, so the fact that it's wisdom and it's not anything else, it's uniquely wisdom, that makes it into something from nothing, or being from nothing. He just says this again and again. I don't know why he repeats this so many times. But he was just saying this is what's called Yichud Ha'ila. Yichud Ha'ila is when the emanated is completely nullified to the emanator, and the reason it's that, and that can be even though it's not, it doesn't lose its uniqueness. It's still unique. And again, here it's because he put the Chachma out, but it's still, this Chachma is completely nullified. לגבי כוח המעווה אותה, כי ביטול זיו של השמש הוא כשהוא עדיין מיוחד בתוך כדור השמש, עד ששם עין ואפס עליו, וזהו פירוש אחד, דהיינו שאין עוד מלבדו ממש שום מציאות, כמו שנדבר לעיל באריכות, אות י"ח וכ"ב. Okay, so all that is the higher unification. Aval yichud hatata, what is the lower unification? Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto Le'olam Ve'ed, the second verse that we say in the Shema. Haynu bitul hayesh al hanivraim shehem biydiatan b'chinat yesh v'davar nifrad. It is when something that has consciousness, that it is separate, is able to nullify that consciousness. And that's what we talked about just a few minutes ago. Hagam שבאמת הם גם כן בטלים כזיו, אלא שזהו כמי כנ"ל עוד כ"ג. Even though, as we said, if you would subtract out our consciousness and you look at yourself through a mirror, or you look at yourself through a satellite picture, you'd see that you're just like everything else. Everything is nullified in the godly light. There's nothing unique and special about you. אלא שאף על פי כן בטלים להשם. And in spite of their separate consciousness, they choose to be nullified to Hashem, to be nullified, to be in bittul. What does it mean to be in bittul? To do what Hashem says. As it says, that the heavenly bodies, they constantly bow down to you. What do we mean they bow down to you? So in the ancient world, there was a clear understanding that the heavenly bodies have consciousness. They know what they're doing. They choose to do what they do. In other words, the fact that they revolve, let's say that they would revolve, the fact that they revolve around the sun, let's say the planets, is because they choose to revolve around the sun, not because they have to. Right? Newton ruined that world, in a certain sense. That world can't exist after Newton, because after Newton, you say this is all gravity. There's nothing else going on here. There's nothing else happening. The Venus does not choose to revolve around the sun. It has to. It's stuck in a gravitational well of the sun. So it's like a marble that's like inside a hole, and it's just spinning around. It has no other choice. But in the ancient world, where they ascribe to them choice, da'at, and the Rambam even says that they have more da'at than we do. They have more. But there he doesn't say da'at of themselves, he says da'at of Hashem. They know Hashem more than we do. Not necessarily that they know themselves, but they know themselves a little bit. They have enough knowledge that they have to choose. And so King David in the Psalm says that the hosts of the heavens, meaning the heavenly bodies, bow down to you. How do they bow down to Hashem? How do they express their nullification? Because they continue revolving forever in the same way. Nobody has that capacity. Nobody has that stamina. A human being couldn't continue forever to bow down before the king, even if his life depended on it. At some point, he'd fall off the horse. There's only so much I can do. But they continue. Uferush, that they are the prime example of lower unification. Now we can understand what the Alter Rebbe wrote in the Sha'ar Yichud. And I think yesterday I was talking with the Yaakov Halperin about this, that this work in itself, it's a work in itself, the Shoresh Mitzvas Hatefilah, is really an explanation of Sha'ar Yichud. Really, when you think about it, the davening here is almost after the fact. Yeah. It's mostly an explanation of Sha'ar Yichud v'Emunah in the Tanya. And we said that both the Midler Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek were very, very, and Reb Aaron of Strashela also, he actually has a book called Sha'ar HaYichud V'Emunah. Everybody was very taken by that composition from the Alter Rebbe. So we'll see how this explains chapter 4 in Sha'ar HaYichud V'Emunah tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem.
Look at this fellow.
It's very controversial figure. The Rebbe loved him. The Rebbe Mamish loved him.
I have friends